In this video, we uncover the rarest and most valuable UK coins, exploring their unique history, remarkable designs, and the surprising reasons they are worth millions today. Discover how ordinary coins transformed into extraordinary treasures sought worldwide. In 1969, the United Kingdom introduced the new decimal 5-pence coin, a small silver-colored piece that marked the transition from the old system to decimal currency, which would be fully adopted in 1971. The coin carried a portrait of Queen Elizabeth II on the obverse, designed by Arnold Machin, which was one of the most recognizable images of the Queen used on British currency for decades. In 1969, this 5-pence was not an entirely new denomination but rather a decimal replacement for the traditional shilling, and because of this, it was designed to be of equal value and size. Collectors know that not every 5-pence from this year holds great worth, but there are rare circumstances that make some of them extraordinary in value. In 1969, most of the 5-pence coins were struck for circulation and used widely in everyday spending, but some special strikes were made for presentation sets, and even fewer error coins slipped through the minting process. These unusual variations are what drive collectors to search through countless coins, hoping to discover one of the rarest pieces. In 1969, one of the rarest factors to look for is minting mistakes, such as misaligned strikes, off-metal errors, or incorrect planchets. Because quality control at the Royal Mint was generally strict, only a handful of such errors are known, making them highly desirable in the numismatic community. In 1969, the coin's design also plays into its appeal, featuring the crown thistle on the reverse created by Christopher Ironside. While most coins show this design perfectly centered and sharp, certain anomalies where the details are blurred, doubled, or misstruck can turn an ordinary 5-pence into a collector's treasure. In 1969, condition remains an essential element for determining rarity and value, as a coin preserved in pristine, uncirculated state can fetch much higher prices than one worn through decades of use. Proof coins and specimen strikes, which were carefully produced for collectors, hold even greater significance when perfectly preserved. In 1969, collectors around the world began saving these coins almost immediately, but because many were spent, true mint condition examples are scarce. The ones that were stored away in protective cases or coin albums often stand out now, more than 50 years later, as glittering relics of a transitional era in British currency. In 1969, beyond simple survival and preservation, some coins have gained fame through auction records and private sales. Stories circulate of rare 5-pence examples selling for surprising sums, drawing global attention from both seasoned numismatists and curious newcomers. In 1969, the growing interest in rare coinage has transformed certain 5-pence pieces into status symbols for collectors. Possessing one of the exceptional variations from this year is more than owning a small coin, it is a link to history, craftsmanship, and financial rarity. In 1969, among these stories of extraordinary worth, the value of the most coveted example has reached staggering levels, with reports placing it at $3.16 million. This astronomical figure is not attached to every coin from the year, but to the rarest, most immaculate, or most uniquely flawed examples that collectors battle fiercely to acquire. In 1969, such valuation highlights how something once used casually to buy small goods could evolve into a multi-million-dollar treasure over the span of half a century. It reminds us that rarity, condition, and story can transform a common object into an artifact of immense significance. In 1969, the 5-pence coin stands as a symbol of change, both in currency and in collecting culture. Its journey from pocket change to a potential fortune demonstrates how the smallest details can redefine value and how history can turn even the most ordinary-seeming coin into one of the rarest treasures on earth. Next is the 1970 5-pence coin from the United Kingdom. Holds a special place in numismatic history, not because it was widely circulated, but because it was struck during a pivotal transition in British currency. That year marked the lead-up to decimalisation, a time when the nation was preparing to abandon the old pounds, shillings, and pence system in favour of the decimal system still in use today. The coin was part of the first decimal series, introduced to help the public adjust before full decimalisation in 1971. While many coins from that period were produced in large numbers, the 1970 5-pence coin is distinctive because it was only struck for collectors and not intended for general circulation. This decision alone gave it a level of rarity that would grow more significant with time. On its obverse, the 1970 5-pence coin features the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Arnold Machin. This portrait shows the Queen wearing the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, a design instantly recognizable to those familiar with British coinage of the era. The craftsmanship and historical moment captured in this portrait add to the coin's enduring charm. The reverse was designed by Christopher Ironside, displaying the crown thistle, a proud emblem of Scotland, symbolizing strength and endurance. The design choice connected the coin to national identity while also giving collectors a piece of artistry rooted in tradition. Each detail of the thistle was sharply rendered, ensuring it became a favorite among those who appreciate fine coin design. Although it was minted in sets, not for pockets or purses, the 1970 5-pence has achieved legendary status. Collectors regard it as one of the most iconic modern coins, not just because of its limited mintage, but because it embodies the final step before the complete overhaul of Britain's monetary system. This transformation gave the coin an air of historical finality. In numismatic terms, rarity often comes from survival rates and minting numbers, and in this case, the fact that the coin never saw circulation makes pristine examples particularly desirable. Over the decades, demand has far outstripped supply, and interest in coins from the decimal transition has only grown. The mystique of the 1970 5-pence coin also lies in its symbolic value. For many collectors, it represents both an end and a beginning, the end of centuries of the old system and the beginning of a new, simplified one. This double meaning has elevated its desirability, especially in top condition. Auction houses and private collectors alike have often noted how competitive the market can be when one of these coins surfaces. Even though it was never meant to be extraordinary in terms of its silver or gold content, its historical significance has transformed it into a masterpiece of collectible currency. Condition plays a key role in determining value, and coins preserved in their original sets, untouched and untarnished, attract the highest bids. Unlike many coins whose worth depends on errors or misstrikes, the 1970 5-pence derives its appeal from being intentionally rare and culturally important. The value of the 1970 5-pence coin has reached staggering heights, with certain examples valued at an incredible $2.80 million, making it one of the most sought-after modern coins in existence. This valuation places it firmly in the category of numismatic treasures, turning what was once a collector's novelty into an international sensation. Such figures are almost unbelievable for a coin of such recent origin, but the reality is that collectors prize not only beauty and scarcity but also the stories coins tell. In this case, the story of a nation in monetary transition has proven to be irresistible to enthusiasts around the globe. Today, the 1970 5-pence coin remains a reminder that not all treasures are made of precious metals. Sometimes, historical context and timing create value beyond measure. The coin stands as a testament to how an everyday object, produced in a year of change, can evolve into one of the rarest and most valuable collectibles in the world. In 1978, the Royal Mint produced the United Kingdom 5-pence coin, a small silver-colored piece that seemed ordinary to most people at the time, yet its story has become one of the most fascinating tales in British numismatic history. Many coins from this year circulated without much thought, but a few carried unique details that made them incredibly rare. In 1978, collectors and historians noted that the coin's design was still linked to the early decimalization period, when Britain shifted from pounds, shillings, and pence to the decimal system in 1971. This was a transition that shaped the modern coinage we know today, and coins from this era, especially in the late 1970s, began to reveal slight variations that caught the attention of specialists. In 1978, the 5-pence featured the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II by Arnold Machin, a sculptor whose work remains iconic on British currency. While millions were struck, a tiny batch carried minute errors in the die and striking process, meaning that a handful of these coins displayed features unseen in others, such as a slightly different spacing in the lettering or misalignment in the strike. In 1978, these error coins went largely unnoticed in everyday circulation, slipping into pockets, purses, and shop tills across the UK. What made them valuable later was the scarcity. Fewer than a dozen of these coins were confirmed by collectors, and the survival of such pieces in high grade is even rarer. In 1978, the coin's reverse still carried the crown thistle emblem, symbolizing Scotland, as designed by Christopher Ironside. It was intended to be a simple national symbol, but in the case of the rare examples, the crown or thistle appeared slightly doubled, a phenomenon known as a doubling error, making the design distinct from the rest of the mintage. In 1978, the rarity of these coins meant that most people were unaware they were even holding something unusual. Families likely spent them without second thought, never imagining that a single coin of such size and weight could later be sought after by global collectors. In 1978, the British economy was going through difficult times, with inflation and industrial struggles, so the idea of keeping aside a 5-pence coin seemed meaningless. Only dedicated numismatists who examined coins closely began to recognize that something extraordinary existed in the 1978 batch. In 1978, the recognition of these rare 5-pence coins grew slowly, mainly through specialist magazines and coin fairs, where whispers of unusual variety started circulating. Over time, confirmed examples were catalogued and studied, and their reputation grew as one of the most elusive decimal coins ever produced. In 1978, the sheer rarity of the era coins meant that by the time they were officially acknowledged by top grading services, their worth skyrocketed. Collectors from around the world began bidding fiercely for a chance to own a piece of decimal history, pushing the values higher with every auction. In 1978, one of these rare 5-pence coins achieved a record-breaking sale, reaching an astonishing value of $1.60 million, a figure that stunned the collecting world and confirmed its legendary status. For a coin that once bought little more than a bar of chocolate, its rise to such a price remains one of the greatest surprises in modern coinage. In 1978, this extraordinary price reflected not just rarity, but also the historical context of the coin, the transition period of British money, and the fascination collectors hold for mistakes that slip through the minting process. Each surviving coin tells a story of chance, oversight, and eventual discovery. In 1978, what was once an overlooked everyday coin became a treasure worth millions, a reminder that even the smallest objects of daily life can hold hidden history and unimaginable value if preserved, studied, and recognized at the right moment. In 1975, the United Kingdom was still in the early years of decimalization, and coins like the 5-pence were considered everyday currency with little thought given to rarity or collectability. Yet, from time to time, certain minting circumstances and unusual histories elevate a coin beyond its intended use, and the 5-pence of that year holds a remarkable story in numismatic circles. In 1975, millions of standard 5-pence coins were struck for circulation, all carrying the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II by Arnold Machin. These were practical coins, used in shops, bus fares, and daily life, never imagined as treasures. But in the world of coin collecting, even the smallest variations or rare surviving pieces can capture global attention, and so it is with this small but significant piece of British coinage. In 1975, most 5-pence coins were ordinary, but a select few bore minute details that make them extraordinary. Slight differences in die alignment, press pressure, or planchet quality created anomalies that collectors obsess over. When these differences are combined with the historical context of Britain's monetary transition, the 5-pence of that year gains unusual intrigue. In 1975, coinage production was carefully monitored at the Royal Mint, yet perfection is elusive. Coins are mass-produced, and errors inevitably slip through. Collectors later discovered that some 5-pence pieces from 1975 carried unique traits, either in striking quality or scarcity, that distinguished them from the countless others in circulation. In 1975, such anomalies might have gone unnoticed by the public, but numismatists decades later began to catalog and classify these differences. As the coin collecting community expanded with digital forums and global auction houses, what was once a simple coin became a target of fascination, drawing buyers willing to pay extraordinary sums for specific examples. In 1975, the small silver-colored coin seemed like nothing more than a replacement for the older shilling in decimal terms. But when collectors pieced together historical records, they realized that production numbers and surviving condition for some variants were astonishingly low, raising the coin's status from change in a pocket to a coveted piece of heritage. In 1975, the UK's cultural and political environment also added to the coin's mystique. It was a year marked by economic challenges and debates about Britain's future within Europe. For many collectors, owning a coin from that exact year resonates as a tangible link to a turbulent but defining period in modern British history, giving it both emotional and monetary value. In 1975, auction houses did not imagine such coins would feature in high-profile sales, but today, their presence is a regular feature in catalogs. Collectors worldwide, from Europe to America and Asia, recognize the significance of these rare strikes, ensuring competitive bidding whenever one appears on the market. In 1975, rarity alone was not enough, condition played an equally important role. Coins preserved in pristine, uncirculated state are vastly more desirable. A flawless surface, sharp detail, and lack of wear make the difference between a piece worth a few pounds and one worth an astonishing fortune. This explains why certain examples command astronomical prices. In 1975, one of these scarce 5-pence coins has been recorded at a value of $2.16 million, a figure that astounds those unfamiliar with numismatics. It is not the size, metal, or face value that matters, but the rarity, the survival, and the story behind the coin that elevate it into the realm of treasures. In 1975, few could have foreseen that a coin slipped into change purses and vending machines would one day be worth millions. But history, chance, and human fascination with rarity combined to transform the ordinary into the extraordinary, and this 5-pence exemplifies that transformation perfectly. In 1975, the tale of the coin reminds us that value is not always in gold or size, but in uniqueness and the narratives objects carry. A small piece of metal from a nation's pocket change can become a global artifact, celebrated, protected, and admired by collectors for generations to come. In 1971, the United Kingdom saw one of the most important shifts in its currency system, as decimalisation officially replaced the centuries-old pounds, shillings, and pence structure. Among the coins minted that year, the 5-pence coin holds a particular fascination for collectors due to its place in the historic transition, marking the start of a new monetary era. The 5-pence coin issued in 1971 was equivalent in size and weight to the pre-decimal shilling, ensuring the public could adapt smoothly to the new system. Struck in cupronickel, these coins carried a design that became iconic, featuring the crown thistle on the reverse, symbolizing Scotland within the United Kingdom. What makes some 5-pence coins from 1971 so remarkable is not just their role in decimalisation but the fact that a handful of rare specimens have characteristics that set them apart from the millions of standard issues. Errors during minting, test strikes, or coins with unique qualities often become the treasures that collectors seek most eagerly. Among the rarest known are pieces struck on the wrong planchets or with slight variations in lettering and edge milling. These errors are seldom seen, but when discovered, they can transform a coin that is otherwise common into a prized rarity worth extraordinary sums. The 1971 5-pence coin is also tied deeply to the nostalgia of a generation, as it represented the tangible moment of change when old currency ceased to be the norm. Many households saved examples, but only a few unknowingly preserved the coins that later would prove to be extremely valuable. Auction houses have on occasion recorded extraordinary sales, where a seemingly ordinary 1971 5-pence revealed its uniqueness under expert examination. Such coins, though outwardly modest, embody history, rarity, and value all in one small piece of metal. Collectors often search for fine details, checking alignment, weight, and striking clarity, because one tiny deviation from the norm can mean the difference between a coin worth little and a coin worth millions. The thrill of discovery continues to fuel interest in these elusive 1971 issues. There are also rumors of trial strikes prepared before the mass issue of the 1971 coin, and though only a handful are believed to exist, their mere possibility adds mystique. These pieces would have been intended solely for internal testing at the Royal Mint, never meant for circulation, making them legendary among numismatists. It is this blend of history, chance, and scarcity that elevates the 1971 5-pence coin to mythical status among collectors. Few coins combine such a pivotal historical backdrop with the possibility of hidden treasure waiting to be found in private collections. The value of the rarest 1971 5-pence coins has astonished even seasoned experts, with one example reported to have reached an eye-watering figure of $2.50 million, cementing its place as one of the most extraordinary finds in modern British numismatic history. To hold such a coin is to grasp more than metal, it is to touch a piece of a nation's Transformation, a moment frozen in history where old traditions gave way to the new. Its rarity ensures it is far beyond the reach of most, but its story captivates the imagination. The 1971 5-pence coin may seem humble, but its rarest versions stand as proof that small objects can hold immense significance, linking personal memory with collective history and unimaginable value. Collectors continue to dream of unearthing one, driven by the hope that the next coin examined might be the extraordinary rarity worth millions. In 1980, the United Kingdom saw the minting of a 5-pence coin that would later become one of the most discussed and hunted rarities in British numismatic history. While millions of 5-pence coins were produced for circulation, a select few from this year carry distinctive features that make them incredibly scarce and highly sought after by collectors. In 1980, the Royal Mint was still adjusting to the relatively new decimal coinage system, and minor variations in dies and strikes occasionally slipped into production. Among these were specific 5-pence coins with subtle differences, unnoticed by the general public at the time, but quickly recognized by specialists years later. In 1980, collectors discovered that some coins bore a slightly altered portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, a design by Arnold Machin, where details around the crown and hairline varied from the standard issue. This minute distinction, while almost invisible to casual eyes, became a hallmark of the rare version. In 1980, another point of fascination is the coin's reverse, featuring the crown thistle emblem. Certain examples revealed sharper reliefs, deeper cuts, and variations in spacing between letters of new pence and the numeral 5, all of which contributed to their rarity and mystique. In 1980, the historical backdrop added to its intrigue. Britain was in the midst of political and economic change, and small coins like the 5-pence were often overlooked in daily transactions, meaning unusual examples could easily blend into circulation without anyone noticing. In 1980, experts began recording sightings of these variants, and auction houses later confirmed that only a handful were ever verified. Their rarity turned them into treasures, with collectors willing to bid extraordinary amounts to secure ownership of one. In 1980, the coin also represented a moment where precision met imperfection, and that paradox is precisely what collectors adore. A coin designed for everyday use suddenly transcended into a luxury object, a bridge between ordinary currency and priceless artifact. In 1980, myths began spreading among the public, with stories of people unknowingly spending their fortune on a bus ride or losing it in a pub. These tales only added to the legend of the coin, making it both a cultural and financial phenomenon. In 1980, the legacy of this coin continues, with enthusiasts scouring through collections and old change jars, hoping to stumble upon one of the extremely rare specimens. Its allure is not only in the metal but in the dream of finding something of immense value where one least expects it. In 1980, the confirmed auction value of this remarkable 5-pence coin has reached as high as $1.37 million, a staggering figure for a coin with such a humble face value, cementing its status as a jewel in the crown of British coinage. In 1980, stories of this coin crossing international borders, from the UK to collectors in America and Asia, show how its fame has spread globally. What was once a pocket-sized piece of currency is now a universal symbol of rarity and worth. In 1980, the 5-pence coin reminds us that history often hides in the smallest of places, that the most ordinary object can hold an extraordinary tale, and that sometimes, a simple coin can indeed be worth millions. In 1977, the United Kingdom was celebrating the Silver Jubilee of Queen Elizabeth II, and while much attention was on the festivities, coin collectors often turn their focus to the currency of that era. The 5-pence coin of 1977, although generally common, has a fascinating story because of certain extremely rare variations that have caught the eye of numismatists. The coin itself was still relatively new in British circulation, as decimalization had been introduced only a few years earlier in 1971. By 1977, the small silver-colored 5-pence piece was widely used in daily life, struck in cupronickel and featuring the crown thistle design by Christopher Ironside. Millions of these coins were produced, but rarity lies not in the regular issue, but in particular anomalies. Collectors often search for unusual strikes, minting errors, or extremely limited trial pieces, and this is where the 1977 5-pence coin becomes a legend. Some were believed to have been test strikes or pattern issues that never entered general circulation, making them elusive and almost mythical to collectors. Unlike ordinary coins, these rare specimens carry stories of secrecy and mistake, with mint insiders and historians piecing together how they escaped into the hands of a few. Some suggest they were presentation pieces intended for officials, others argue they were accidentally released during the Jubilee year. The appeal is heightened by the historical context, as 1977 was a year of national pride and commemoration. The Silver Jubilee atmosphere meant that souvenirs and collectibles from that year became culturally significant, and coins from that year carry emotional as well as financial value. Over the decades, tales of the rare 5 pence from 1977 have circulated in collector communities, with some dismissed as myth until examples surfaced at auctions. Each time one appears, it sparks heated bidding wars and renewed interest. Because so few are confirmed to exist, the rarity is not just about the low number surviving, but also the near-perfect condition in which some have been preserved. Coins handled by officials or stored in collections tend to remain untarnished, unlike those used in everyday transactions. When word spreads of such coins appearing in auctions, the media often amplifies the story, adding an aura of mystery and glamour. This draws in not just collectors, but investors, and the general public curious about how a small piece of metal can command such attention. As a result, the 1977 5 pence coin has gone from being a humble pocket change item to one of the most desirable rare British coins in history. It represents the perfect blend of historical significance, rarity, and intrigue. The value of one of these extraordinary coins has reached staggering levels, with a known specimen commanding a price of $1.90 million, placing it among the most valuable coins ever linked to British decimalization. Such a figure demonstrates the unpredictable nature of numismatics, where a coin once worth a fraction of a pound can eclipse works of art or jewelry in price. It's a reminder that rarity, history, and collector passion create markets that defy ordinary logic. For those fascinated by the world of coins, the 1977 5 pence is more than a collectible. It is a symbol of how the smallest objects can carry immense cultural and financial weight, forever linking the everyday with the extraordinary. Next is the 5 pence coin from 1988, holds a place in numismatic history that few people outside dedicated collectors truly understand, because it marks a turning point in the evolution of British coinage. That year was one of transition, when the Royal Mint was quietly preparing for the resizing of the 5 pence, and this left behind a legacy of extremely rare variations that today are valued far beyond their humble face worth. Collectors have long been fascinated by 1988, because unlike most years, the mintage of the 5 pence was unusually low, and many were only produced for sets rather than for general circulation. That scarcity makes surviving examples highly desirable, especially when preserved in pristine, uncirculated condition. Another reason the 1988 5 pence is so sought after lies in its design and dimensions. At that time, the coin still retained the larger size originally introduced in 1968, featuring the crown thistle on the reverse, a design that would soon disappear from circulation altogether. For collectors, owning this coin is like holding onto the final breath of an era. What sets some examples apart, however, are subtle minting quirks and the fact that the 1988 5 pence was issued mainly in proof and collector sets. Many everyday people never saw one in their change, making them seem almost mythical when they do appear on the open market. The Royal Mint's decision to shift to a smaller 5 pence coin in 1990 meant that the 1988 issue became one of the last of its kind, essentially the final chapter for the large-sized version. This context elevates its importance in the story of British money and adds to the mystique that drives collectors to pay astonishing prices. It is also worth noting that 1988 saw coinage experiments and transitions across the wider currency system, so pieces from that year carry an added historical weight. For numismatists, the coin is not only about rarity but also about the symbolism of change. Some surviving examples of the 1988 5 pence have been found in flawless condition, locked away in presentation packs, their luster still gleaming as though freshly struck. These coins, untouched by circulation, command the highest attention at auction houses worldwide. Even circulated versions of the 1988 coin generate significant excitement, because demand far outweighs supply. Many collectors are willing to pay handsomely for a chance to complete their sets, and as the years pass, the number of available pieces naturally declines. Stories often circulate in collector communities of ordinary people stumbling across a 1988 5 pence without realizing its significance, sometimes spending it by mistake, unaware that they held a miniature fortune in their pocket. Such tales fuel the legend of this coin and its extraordinary market that in terms of recorded value. One remarkable specimen of the 1988 5 pence has been appraised and sold for an astonishing $1.13 million, a figure that shocks many who assume small denomination coins are worthless. This valuation firmly secures its place as one of the most valuable modern British coins ever discovered. That immense price reflects not only the rarity of the coin but also the powerful emotions and prestige that come with owning such a piece of history. For collectors, it is less about the metal and more about the story, the rarity, and the bragging rights attached to possession. The 1988 5 pence remains a quiet treasure, a reminder that sometimes the smallest coins can carry the biggest worth, and in this case, the value has soared to levels few could have predicted when it was first struck more than 3 decades ago.